Inside a rundown diner, Amara, a poor black waitress, quietly slips $5 bills into the torn briefcase of a homeless old man. Despite her own poverty and constant lack, that night, just as she pulls her hand away, the manager suddenly grabs her wrist, accuses her of stealing, and brutally throws her out into the rain along with her belongings. But just before the door closes, the old man stands up, tells the truth, and silently places a key engraved with 404 into Amara's hand. 2 hours later, he dies, and that same night, 3 Mercedes Maybachs pull up outside her home, carrying a sealed envelope that will change her life forever. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. Amara, get away from that trash bag and clean table 5, now! Rick's voice cut through the greasy air of rusty anchor like a rusty blade. Amara flinched, her fingers still trembling as she slipped a $5 bill into the gap of the worn leather briefcase next to old Arthur, who sat slumped in his usual corner booth, apparently dozing. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled her hand back slowly, trying to look casual, but her pulse screamed otherwise. I said now, Amara. Coming. She grabbed her tray and hurried toward table 5, where a couple sat waiting with annoyed expressions. The smell of burnt grease and stale coffee clung to everything in this place. After 3 years working here, she'd stopped noticing it most days anyway. Arthur hadn't moved. His gray beard covered most of his weathered face, and his coat, too heavy for spring, hung loose on his thin frame. Every night for the past month he'd been here. Every night Amara had done the same thing. She wasn't stupid. She knew what Rick would do if he caught her, but she couldn't stop. The old man reminded her of Dad. Same tired eyes, same way of sitting with shoulders hunched like the world had pressed down on him for too long. Dad had died when she was 14, a construction accident they'd called it, though Mom always said there was more to the story. Amara had learned not to ask. She delivered 2 plates of meatloaf to table 5 and pocketed a $3 tip. $3. That brought her total for the night to 18. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She glanced at the screen. Mom. Amara stepped into the narrow hallway by the restrooms and answered. Hey, Mom. Amara, honey. Her mother's voice sounded thin-stretched. I hate to ask, but the pharmacy called. My prescription's ready, but it's $62 this time. Insurance didn't cover it. Amara closed her eyes. $62. She had maybe 40 saved from the past 2 weeks, and that was supposed to cover the electric bill. I can pick it up tomorrow, Amara said quietly. I'll figure it out. Are you sure I don't want you? It's fine, Mom. I promise. She hung up before her voice could crack. When she returned to the dining area, her eyes went straight to Arthur's booth. He was awake now, watching her with those strangely clear blue eyes. Most homeless folks who came in here had a foggy, distant look. Too much drink, too much cold, too much pain. But Arthur's gaze was sharp, aware. It unnerved her sometimes. Amara walked to his table. Can I get you anything else? Just the company if you've got a moment. His voice was rough but kind. She glanced toward the kitchen. Rick was busy yelling at the cook. She sat down across from Arthur just for a second. You've been good to me, Arthur said. Why? Amara shrugged. You remind me of someone. Your father. Her breath caught. How did you? Lucky guess. He smiled faintly. I've been around long enough to recognize that look. You see him when you look at me. She nodded, throat tight. Arthur leaned back. Kindness like yours is rare. Most people walk past folks like me, pretend we're invisible. You're not invisible, Amara said. Nobody is. He studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill. He set it on the table. For the coffee. It's $2. Keep the rest. Amara hesitated. $8. That would help. God, that would help. But she couldn't take it. Not from him. You keep it, she said, standing. You need it more than I do. She walked away before he could argue. The rest of her shift dragged. By closing time, she'd made $23 total in tips. She separated 10 for Mom's medication, and the remaining 13, minus the last 5, she couldn't stop herself from giving. Arthur left her with 8 in her pocket. Her fingers brushed the remaining bills as she thought about Arthur. He was still there, briefcase beside him, staring at nothing. Amara made her decision. She walked to his booth, checked to make sure Rick was in the back office, counting the register, and pulled $5 from her apron. She opened the flap of Arthur's briefcase just a little and slipped the money inside. Gotcha. Rick's hand clamped around her wrist like a vice. Amara's stomach dropped. She spun around, but Rick's grip tightened, yanking her arm up so everyone in the diner could see. "Stealing from customers now, Amara?" His voice boomed across the room. "And from a homeless guy, no less. That's low even for you." "What? No, I was putting money in." "Sure you were." Rick's smile was vicious. "I've been watching you, sneaking around messing with his stuff. Thought you were being clever, huh?" "Rick, please, I wasn't stealing. I swear. Save it." He released her wrist and jabbed a finger toward the door. "You're done here. Get your stuff and get out." "You can't fire me. I didn't do anything wrong." "Oh, I can fire you. And I am." Rick crossed his arms, enjoying this. "Been looking for a reason anyway. You're slow, you talk back, and now you're a thief. I don't owe you a dime for this month either. Thieves don't get paid." Amara's vision blurred. A month's wages. Gone. That was $400 she desperately needed. "Please," she whispered. "I have to pay for my mom's medication. I need that money." "Should have thought of that before you started stealing." Rick turned to the remaining customers, playing to his audience. "Can you believe this sweet little Amara robbing a homeless man? Shameful." Amara felt the stares, the judgment. She wanted to scream to fight, but her voice had died in her throat. Dot. Then Arthur moved. He stood slowly, and something about the way he carried himself made the room go quiet. He didn't look frail anymore. He looked solid, grounded, like a man used to being listened to. "She wasn't stealing," Arthur said calmly. Rick scoffed. "Yeah, and how would you know, old man?" "Because she's been giving me money." Every night for a month, Arthur's gaze pinned Rick in place. "She takes from her own tips money she earns and puts it in my briefcase when she thinks no one's looking. Tonight I watched her do it again." Rick blinked, thrown off. That's still against policy. She can't just—" "Against policy, to be kind." Arthur's tone hardened. "Interesting rule." Rick's face flushed. "Look, I don't care what sob story you've got. She's fired. End of discussion." Arthur didn't argue. He simply reached into his coat and pulled out a small brass key. The number 404 was engraved on it. He set it on the table in front of Amara. "Kindness is a risky investment, Amara," he said quietly. "But today, you just bought yourself a future." She stared at the key, confused. "What is this?" Arthur didn't answer. He picked up his briefcase, nodded once, and walked toward the door. His steps were steady, purposeful. Not the shuffle of a broken man, but the stride of someone who knew exactly where he was going. The door swung shut behind him. Rick grabbed Amara's arm again. "I want you out. Now." 10 minutes later, Amara stood on the rain-soaked sidewalk outside Rusty Anchor, her belongings shoved into a garbage bag Rick had thrown at her. Her uniform was wet. Her hands were shaking. The key to room 404 sat in her palm, cold and meaningless. She had no job. Almost no money, just $8 left to her name. And in 3 days, she'd have no apartment either. The rain poured harder, and Amara sank down onto the curb, clutching the garbage bag to her chest. She'd done the right thing. She knew she had. So why did it feel like the world was punishing her for it? Amara sat slumped against the chipped door of her apartment building, the garbage bag of her belongings soaking through beside her. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind cold puddles and the smell of wet asphalt. She stared at the brass key in her palm, 404, turning it over and over like it might suddenly make sense. It didn't quote T. Her phone buzzed. A text from the landlord: "Rent due tomorrow, or you're out." She laughed bitterly, out of where she was already out of everything else. The math was simple and brutal. She had $8. Mom's medication was $62. Rent was $350. Even if she sold blood tomorrow at $25 a pop, she'd still be drowning. Amara pressed her forehead against her knees. Maybe she could ask Mom's neighbor for a loan. Maybe she could beg Rick for her last paycheck. Maybe she could. The sound of engines made her look up. 3 black Mercedes Maybachs rolled down her street like ships cutting through fog. They moved slowly, deliberately, their chrome grills gleaming under the streetlights. This neighborhood didn't see cars like that, ever. Amara scrambled to her feet as all 3 vehicles stopped directly in front of her building. The rear door of the middle car opened. A man stepped out. 60-something, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Amara made in a year. He moved with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of people getting out of his way. He walked straight toward her. Amara, S heart pounded. Was she blocking something? Did she look too homeless sitting here? She grabbed her garbage bag, ready to move. "Miss Amara O'Connell." The man's voice was smooth, formal. She froze. Yes. He stopped 3 feet away and bowed, actually bowed, like she was someone important. My name is Harrison Baines. I'm the executor of Mr. Arthur Sterling's estate. Amara blinked. Arthur, the man from the diner. Yes, ma'am. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Chen's window slide open. Then another. And another. Her neighbors, people who'd never said more than 2 words to her, were watching. I don't understand, Amara said slowly. What does Arthur's estate have to do with me? Baines reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Perhaps we should speak privately. I don't have anywhere private to go. Then, with your permission, may I speak plainly here? Amara nodded, her mouth dry. Baines straightened. The man you knew as Arthur the homeless man you showed kindness to for the past month was Arthur Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Industries. His net worth at the time of his death was approximately $4.3 billion. The world tilted. What? The word barely made it past her lips. Mr. Sterling spent the last 3 months of his life living as you saw him, without money, without status, without the protections his wealth afforded him. He wanted to find someone with a genuinely kind heart, someone who would help a stranger with nothing to offer in return. Baines's expression softened. He found you. Amara shook her head. No, that doesn't make sense. He was just an old man. He was dying. Pancreatic cancer stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He spent his final days searching for someone worthy of his legacy. Baines paused. 2 hours after he left Rusty Anchor tonight, he passed away peacefully in his suite at the Grandview Hotel. The garbage bag slipped from Amara's fingers. Arthur was dead. The man she'd fed. The man she'd given her last $5 to. The man who reminded her of Dad. Gone. I'm sorry for your loss, Baines said quietly, but I'm here because Mr. Sterling made arrangements for you. Arrangements? Amara's voice cracked. Baines handed her the envelope. His last will and testament. He left everything to you, Miss O'Connell. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it. Amara stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. That's not possible. It's very possible, and very real. Baines gestured toward the cars. However, there is one condition. Of course there was. What condition? Amara asked. You must live at Sterling Manor for 30 consecutive days without leaving the property. If you succeed, the estate transfers to you fully. If you leave for any reason other than a direct threat to your life or to seek justice for your father, the inheritance is void and the estate passes to Mr. Sterling's nephew, Brendan Sterling. Amara's head spun. 30 days. That's it. 30 days. Baines's tone shifted darker now. But I need to warn you about Brendan. He's Arthur's only living relative and he expected to inherit everything. When he learns about you, and he will, he'll do everything in his power to force you out before the 30 days are up. What kind of everything? The kind that doesn't leave bruises where people can see them. Baines met her eyes. Arthur knew his nephew well. That's why he structured the will this way. He wanted to give you a fighting chance. A fighting chance to inherit billions. From a homeless man who wasn't homeless at all. Amara pressed her palm against her forehead. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Why me? She whispered. I just gave him some food, some money. It wasn't anything special. It was everything, Baines said. He told me about you before he died. He said you gave from a place of genuine scarcity. You had so little and still you shared. That's the kind of person he wanted to carry his name forward. Amara's knees felt weak. She sat back down on the curb, the envelope clutched in her hands. Mrs. Chen was definitely watching now. So was half the building. I need you to make a decision, Baines said. If you accept, we leave now. Tonight. You'll have security resources, everything you need to survive the 30 days. But once you step onto that property, you cannot leave until the time is up. And if I say no, then the estate passes to Brendan by default. You return to your life as it was. Amara looked at the garbage bag beside her, at the overdue rent notice taped to her door, at the key to room 404 still in her hand. Her life as it was meant losing her apartment, losing the ability to help Mom, losing everything she was barely holding on to. But accepting meant walking into a world she didn't understand, with enemies she'd never met, for 30 days in a mansion that might as well be a prison. She thought about Arthur's last words. You just bought yourself a future. If I do this, Amara said slowly, can I send money to my mother for her medication? All expenses will be covered, Baines assured her. Medical personnel, anything she needs. Amara stood. Her legs trembled, but she forced them steady. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Baines smiled, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. A wise choice, Miss O'Connell. He opened the car door for her. Amara grabbed her garbage bag and the key, feeling the weight of every stare from every window. She climbed into the back seat. The leather was soft. The air smelled like expensive cologne. The door closed, sealing her in. As the convoy pulled away from the only home she'd known for 3 years, Amara pressed her face against the tinted window. She watched her building shrink in the distance, the lights flickering like dying stars. Baines sat across from her, hands folded. "What's Brendan like?" Amara asked. "Intelligent, ruthless, entitled." Baines's jaw tightened. "He'll see you as an obstacle, a temporary inconvenience. Don't underestimate him." And Sterling Manor. It's been in the family for 60 years. Brendan knows every inch of it. The staff are loyal to whoever pays them, and right now that's still technically him until the will clears probate. Amara swallowed hard. "So I'm walking into enemy territory." "Yes," Baines said simply, "but you're not alone. I'll be with you." And Arthur left instructions, resources, tools you'll need. "Why are you helping me?" Baines looked out the window. "Because Arthur Sterling was the best man I ever knew, and he believed in you. That's enough for me." The car turned onto a highway heading out of the city. Amara clutched the brass key until her knuckles went white. 30 days. She could survive 30 days. She had to. The convoy didn't go straight to Sterling Manor. Instead, Baines directed the driver to First National Bank downtown. The building stood like a fortress, glass and steel, climbing 20 stories into the night sky. "Before we go to the estate," Baines said as the car stopped, "there's something Arthur wanted you to see. Something he kept for you." Amara followed him through the marble lobby, past security guards who nodded at Baines like he owned the place. Maybe he did. They took an elevator down, not up, descending into the vault levels beneath the bank. The elevator doors opened to reveal a long hallway lined with safety deposit boxes. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air was cool and sterile. Baines led her to box 404. Amara quotes, breath caught, the same number as the key. "Arthur rented this box 20 years ago," Baines said quietly. "He's been paying for it ever since, waiting for the right person to open it." Amara's hands shook as she inserted the brass key. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside was a large manila envelope yellowed with age. She pulled it out carefully, feeling the weight of something more than paper inside. Baines stepped back, giving her space. Amara opened the envelope. The first thing that fell out was a photograph. She recognized her father, immediately younger, maybe 30, with the same dark hair and cautious smile she remembered from childhood. He stood shoulder to shoulder with a man who could only be Arthur Sterling, decades younger, but unmistakable. They were both wearing hard hats, standing in front of a massive blueprint mounted on an easel. The blueprint showed a skyscraper, sleek, modern, impossibly tall. Amara flipped the photo over. On the back, in faded ink, Michael O'Connell and Arthur Sterling. Sterling Tower 1, June 2005. "My father knew Arthur." Her voice barely worked. "They were partners," Baines said. "Your father was the architectural genius behind Sterling Industries' early success." Amara set the photo down with trembling fingers and reached back into the envelope. She pulled out a stack of documents, blueprints, technical drawings, patent applications. All of them bore her father's name. O'Connell Seismic Dampening System, patent pending. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. "What is this?" she whispered. "Your father invented a revolutionary earthquake-resistant building technology," Baines explained. "It made skyscrapers safer, cheaper to build in seismic zones. It's the foundation of Sterling Industries' entire construction division, worth hundreds of millions." Amara looked up sharply. "Then why haven't I ever heard of it? Why isn't his name on anything?" Baines's expression darkened. "Because 3 weeks before the patent was finalized, your father died in a car accident. His brakes failed on a mountain road." The room tilted. "An accident," Amara repeated numbly. "That's what the police report said." Baines moved closer, his voice dropping. But Arthur never believed it. He suspected his brother, Richard Sterling, Brendan's father, had something to do with it. Amara's hands clenched around the documents. "Why would Richard kill my father? Control. Money. The patent was about to be filed under your father's name, which meant he'd own the technology. Richard wanted it for the Sterling family. Exclusively. And Arthur just let it happen. Arthur didn't know until it was too late, Baines said. By the time he uncovered evidence, Richard had already died of a heart attack. The secret died with him. Except Arthur kept this. Amara held up the documents. Why keep evidence and do nothing with it? Guilt, Baines said simply. Arthur blamed himself for not protecting your father. He tried to find you and your mother afterward, but you'd moved, changed addresses. He spent years searching. Amara's chest ached, all those years struggling. All those nights Mom worked double shifts. They could have had help. They could have had justice. He found you a month ago, Baines continued, working at Rusty Anchor. He watched you for weeks before approaching you as a homeless man. He needed to know if you were like your father, genuinely good, not corrupted by bitterness. So this was all a test. Anger flared in Amara's chest. It was penance, Baines corrected. Arthur was dying. He couldn't fix what Richard did, but he could give you what should have been your father's legacy. Amara stared at the photograph. Her father looked so young, so hopeful. She quote D never known him like this. There's more, Baines said, nodding toward the envelope. Amara reached in and pulled out the last item, a letter in Arthur's handwriting. Dear Amara, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth face to face. Your father was my best friend, and I failed him. I failed you. This inheritance isn't charity, it's restitution. What's mine should have been his. What's his should have been yours. Take it. Use it. Make the Sterling name mean something good again. And watch out for Brendan. He's his father's son. As Amara folded the letter carefully and placed everything back in the envelope. I want to leave now, she said. Baines nodded and led her back toward the elevator. They were halfway across the vault room when the elevator doors opened. A man stepped out. Tall, early 30s, wearing a tailored navy suit that screamed money. His hair was dark and styled perfectly. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Well, he said, Uncle Harrison. And this must be the charity case. Baines stiffened. Brendan. So this was him. Arthur's nephew. The man who wanted her dead or gone. Brendan walked toward them with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. His eyes raked over Amara, her worn clothes, her scuffed shoes, the garbage bag she'd left in the car, but might as well still be carrying. You're smaller than I expected, Brendan said. I pictured someone more impressive. Funny, Amara said. I pictured you the same way. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. Brendan stepped closer, deliberately planting his expensive leather shoe on top of Amara's worn sneaker. He pressed down, not enough to hurt, but enough to make his point. You don't belong here, he said quietly. Amara didn't move, didn't flinch. Your uncle thought differently. My uncle was a senile old man who let a waitress manipulate him in his final days. Brendan reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. He flipped it open, signed his name at the bottom of a blank check, and held it out to her. Fill in whatever number you want. 1 million. 5 million. I don't care. Take it and disappear. Amara stared at the check. She thought about Mom's medication, about the overdue rent, about every bill, every sleepless night, every moment of wondering if they'd make it through the month. She took the check from his hand, yet Brendan, quote, a smile widened. Smart girl. Amara tore the check in half, then in half again. She let the pieces flutter to the floor between them. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Brendan, quote, as expression went flat. Dangerous. You should reconsider, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because if you don't take this deal, you'll end up just like your father at the bottom of a ravine nobody bothers to check. The words hit like a physical blow. Amara, quote, S. heart stopped. What did you just say? You heard me. Brendan leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear. My father told me stories about Michael O'Connell, about how easy it was to cut a brake line, about how nobody even questioned it. Rage exploded in Amara's chest. She shoved Brendan back hard. He stumbled, surprise flashing across his face. You just admitted your family murdered my father, Amara said, her voice shaking with fury. Brendan straightened his jacket, smile returning. I admitted nothing, just shared some family folklore. Good luck proving otherwise. He turned and walked back toward the elevator, pausing at the doors. 30 days, Amara. You won't last 10. He stepped inside. And when you run, I'll be waiting with another check. A smaller one. The elevator doors closed. Amara stood, frozen fists clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms. Baines touched her shoulder gently. Are you all right? No. Amara said. "I'm not." She looked down at the torn pieces of the check scattered on the floor, then at the envelope in her other hand, her father's work, her father's dreams, her father's stolen legacy. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about justice. "Let's go to the manor," Amara said, her voice steady now. "I've got 30 days to make that bastard regret everything." Baines smiled grimly. "Your father would be proud." They walked back to the elevator together, leaving the pieces of Brendan's check behind, like broken promises on the cold marble floor. Sterling Manor rose from the hillside like a monument to old money and older sins. Gray stone walls, Gothic windows, iron gates that closed behind the convoy with a sound like a prison cell locking. Amara stepped out of the car and stared up at the mansion. It looked like something out of a horror movie, all sharp angles and shadows, even in daylight. "Welcome home," Baines said, though his tone suggested otherwise. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman stood in the entrance. 60-something steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a black dress that made her look like she was perpetually attending a funeral. Her eyes were cold as the stone beneath Amara's feet. "Mrs. Higgins," Baines said. "This is Miss O'Connell. She'll be staying in the East Wing Master Suite." "Of course." Mrs. Higgins' smile was thin and utterly false. "We've been expecting you." The way she said it made Amara's skin crawl. Inside the mansion was worse. High ceilings that swallowed sound, dark wood paneling, portraits of stern-faced Sterling ancestors glaring down from the walls. The air smelled like dust and furniture polish, and something else, something stale and unwelcoming. "Your room is upstairs, Mrs." Higgins said, already turning away. "Dinner is at 7. Don't be late." Amara followed her up a sweeping staircase, their footsteps echoing. She counted doors as they walked 12 on the second floor alone. The hallway stretched forever. Mrs. Higgins stopped at the last door on the right and pushed it open. "The master suite," she announced. The room was enormous. 4-poster bed, antique furniture, windows overlooking the grounds. It should have been impressive. Instead, it felt like a trap. "If you need anything, ring the bell." Mrs. Higgins gestured to a small brass bell on the nightstand. "Though I can't promise how quickly we'll respond. We're quite understaffed at the moment." She left without another word, pulling the door shut behind her. Amara stood alone in the massive room, listening to the silence. 30 days. She could survive 30 days. The first night, the power went out. Amara was in the bathroom when the lights died. Total darkness, sudden and complete. She fumbled for her phone, using its flashlight to navigate back to the bedroom. She tried the bell, rang it 3 times. Nobody came. She went to the door. Locked. No, not locked, stuck. She pulled harder, but it wouldn't budge, like something was blocking it from the outside. Amara's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to breathe. This was a test. They wanted her scared. She wedged a chair under the doorknob just in case and settled into bed with her phone as the only light source. She didn't sleep, just lay there watching the battery percentage drop, listening to the house creak and settle around her. At 3 a.m., the power came back on. The door opened freely in the morning. Mrs. Higgins served breakfast with that same cold smile. "I hope you slept well. We had a minor electrical issue. All fixed now." "Right," Amara said. Minor. The food looked normal. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. But Amara didn't touch it. She'd worked in a diner long enough to know when something was off. "Not hungry?" Mrs. Higgins asked. "I'll make something myself later." "As you wish." Mrs. Higgins collected the plate without argument. That afternoon, Amara discovered the kitchen. She made herself a sandwich using ingredients she selected and prepared herself. She ate standing by the sink, watching the staff watch her back. There were 5 of them total. Mrs. Higgins, 2 maids who never spoke, a groundskeeper who glared whenever she passed, and a cook who refused to meet her eyes. All of them loyal to Brendan. All of them waiting for her to break. Day 2, the hot water stopped working. Day 3, her clothes went missing from the laundry. Day 4, she found dead flowers on her pillow. Small things, petty things, designed to wear her down. Amara ignored them. She kept her head down, stayed in her room, and counted the hours. Night 5 changed everything. Amara woke to a smell. Sharp, chemical, wrong. Her eyes opened in the darkness, and her brain screamed one word: gas. She sat up fast, head swimming. The smell was stronger near the floor, filling the room like invisible water rising. She stumbled to the door and pulled. Lock. She pulled harder. The door didn't move. Someone had locked it from the outside. Panic clawed at her throat, but Amara forced it down. Screaming wouldn't help. Nobody would come. That was the point, Dot. Think, Dot, the windows, Dot. She ran to the nearest one and tried to open it. Painted shut. She tried the second. Same thing. The third wouldn't budge either. The smell was getting worse. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred at the edges. Dot, the bathroom, Dot. Amara stumbled into the attached bathroom and soaked a hand towel in cold water from the sink. She pressed it over her nose and mouth, breathing through the wet fabric. It helped. Not much, but enough to think. She needed air. Fresh air. Now, Dot, the bedroom windows wouldn't open, but she could break them. Amara grabbed the iron leg of the desk chair and swung it at the nearest window. The glass cracked. She swung again, and again. On the fourth hit, it shattered outward in a shower of glittering shards. Cold night air rushed in like salvation. Dot Amara sucked in huge, gasping breaths, leaning against the window frame. Her hands were shaking. Blood dripped from a small cut on her palm where she'd grabbed the broken glass wrong. Dot. She didn't care. Dot. She was alive. Amara looked down. 3 stories up. No way to climb down. No way to escape without leaving the property, which would void the inheritance. Dot. She was trapped. Dot. But she wasn't helpless. Dot Amara grabbed the largest piece of broken glass from the floor, about 8 inches long, jagged and sharp. She wrapped one end in a pillowcase to make a handle. Then she sat on the window ledge, weapon in hand, and waited for morning. Dot. She didn't sleep. Didn't dare. Just sat there breathing fresh air, watching the darkness slowly fade to gray. When the sun finally rose, Amara stood. Her muscles ached, her eyes burned, but her hands were steady. Dot. She walked to the door and tried it. Dot. Unlocked now. Of course. Amara made her way downstairs. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Like everyone was waiting to see if she'd come down or if they'd succeeded in driving her out. Dot. She found Mrs. Higgins in the kitchen, supervising breakfast preparation. "Good morning, Miss O'Connell," the woman said without turning. "I trust you slept well." "No," Amara said. "I didn't." Mrs. Higgins turned, and for just a second surprise crossed her face. She'd expected Amara to be gone, or broken, or both. "There was a gas leak in my room last night," Amara continued. "Funny how it started after my door locked from the outside." "How unfortunate," Mrs. Higgins said smoothly. "Old houses have so many issues. I'll have someone look at it." "Don't bother." Amara walked to the coffee maker and started brewing a pot. "I'll be sleeping with my window open from now on." She poured herself a cup when it finished, then turned to Mrs. Higgins. "Try it," Amara said. "Excuse me?" "The coffee. Try it. I want to watch you drink it." Mrs. Higgins's expression tightened. "I don't drink it." Amara repeated, her voice harder now. "Or I pour it out and make my own from ingredients I select personally. Your choice." The kitchen had gone silent. The 2 maids had stopped working. The cook had frozen mid-chop. Everyone was watching. Dot. Mrs. Higgins took the cup. Her hand trembled slightly, barely visible. But there, Dot. She raised it to her lips and took a small sip. "Satisfied?" she asked coldly. "For now." Amara took the cup back and drank deeply. The coffee was bitter, but clean. No strange aftertaste. No chemical edge. She set the empty cup in the sink and turned to face the staff. "Let me be clear," Amara said. "I know what you're trying to do. I know who's paying you. And I know you think I'll break and run before the 30 days are up." Nobody spoke. "But I'm not running," Amara continued. "I've worked double shifts on 3 hours of sleep. I've lived on ramen and hope. I've survived worse than this house and everyone in it." She met Mrs. Higgins' eyes directly. "So you can cut my power, lock my doors, poison my food. I don't care, because in 25 days this house will be mine. And every single one of you will be unemployed." Mrs. Higgins' face went white. "Unless," Amara added, "you start doing your actual jobs. In which case, maybe I'll keep you on. Maybe." She walked out of the kitchen without waiting for a response. Dot. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking again, but she didn't let it show. She kept her back straight, her steps even until she reached the library and closed the door behind her. Then she slid down against the wall and let out a long, shaky breath. 25 days, Dot. She could survive 25 more days. She had to Dot. That afternoon, Amara found fresh towels in her bathroom, hot water in her shower, her laundry returned cleaned and folded. Dot. Nobody apologized. Nobody acknowledged the change. But something had shifted. Dot. Mrs. Higgins still looked at her with cold hatred. The staff still avoided her. But the small acts of sabotage stopped. Dot. They weren't allies. Not even close. Dot. But they weren't actively trying to kill her anymore. Dot. It was a start. Amara spent the rest of the day exploring the library, Arthur's books, Arthur's notes, Arthur's life preserved in leather-bound volumes and yellowed photographs. She found a picture of her father again, this time with Arthur and a woman who must have been Arthur's wife. They were laughing, young, happy. Before everything went wrong, Amara traced her finger over her father's face. "I'm going to finish what you started," she whispered. "I promise." Outside, storm clouds gathered over Sterling Manor. Inside, Amara O'Connell settled in for the long fight ahead. 20-5 days to go. Day 7 began with rain hammering against the windows. Amara sat in the library staring at the photograph she'd found yesterday. Her father, Arthur, Arthur's wife, all of them smiling like the world made sense. Arthur's last words to her kept circling through her mind. Kindness always leaves a trace. At the time, she'd thought he meant her actions, the money she'd slipped into his briefcase, the food she'd shared. But what if he meant something else? What if he'd left her a trace? A trail to follow, Amara stood and began searching the library more carefully. The room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls. A stone fireplace dominated the 4th. Leather chairs, a mahogany desk, every surface covered in decades of accumulated knowledge. She started with the photographs on the mantel. Arthur with various dignitaries. Arthur cutting ribbons at building openings. Arthur receiving awards. And there pushed to the back behind the others a portrait. Not a photograph, an actual oil painting. Amara lifted it carefully and carried it to the desk where the light was better. The portrait showed her father in his early 30s wearing a work shirt and holding blueprints. The artist had captured him mid-laugh, eyes bright with some joke lost to time. It was beautiful, and it was hidden. Why Amara ran her fingers along the frame, then over the canvas itself. The painting felt strange in one spot, the chest area right where her father's shirt pocket was painted. She looked closer. The paint there was thicker, layered, like someone had gone over it multiple times. Her pulse quickened. She carried the portrait to the window, angling it in the natural light. Yes, definitely thicker. And if she looked very carefully, she could see the faint outline of something beneath the paint. Numbers, maybe. Amara set the painting down and searched the desk drawers until she found a magnifying glass. She examined the pocket area under magnification. There, barely visible through the layers of oil paint. 3 numbers painted in tiny script. July 21st, 18. Amara sat back, mind racing. What did it mean? A date, a combination, a code. She looked around the library, trying to think like Arthur. If he'd hidden numbers in plain sight, where would he hide what they unlocked? Her eyes fell on the bookshelves. Hundreds of books, thousands maybe. Legal texts, architectural journals, novels, histories. A lifetime of reading organized by what? She couldn't see a clear system. Wait. Amara walked to the shelf closest to the fireplace. Law books. All of them thick leather-bound volumes. She scanned the spines until she found what she was looking for. Constitutional law. Volume 7. Her hands shook as she pulled it from the shelf. Heavy, dense. She flipped to page 21. The page had been hollowed out. Not the whole page, just a small rectangular section cut carefully into the paper. Inside the hollow sat a key. Small brass, old-fashioned. One down. Amara returned the book and searched for volume 21. She found it 3 shelves up. Page 18 had another hollow section. Another key. 2 down. Volume 18 was on the bottom shelf. Page 7 contained the 3rd key. Amara stood with all 3 keys in her palm, heart hammering. 3 keys. But for what? She turned slowly, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on the fireplace that hadn't been used in years, judging by the dust. The fireplace with the elaborate stone mantel carved with Sterling family crests and Latin phrases. Amara knelt in front of it, running her hands over the stones. Cold, solid, nothing obviously different about any of them. She pressed, pulled, twisted. Nothing happened. Then she noticed the brass grating at the base of the firebox. Old-fashioned, decorative, with 3 small keyholes barely visible in the intricate metalwork. Her breath stopped. Amara inserted the 1st key. It turned smoothly. A soft click echoed inside the chimney. 2nd key. Another click. 3rd key. A louder click followed by a grinding sound of stone moving against stone. The back panel of the fireplace swung inward, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside sat a small metal box. Amara pulled it out with trembling hands. The box was locked, but one of the keys from the books fit. She turned it and lifted the lid. Inside was a cassette tape recorder, ancient, covered in dust, and beneath it, a label in Arthur's handwriting for Amara. The truth about Michael. I'm sorry. Amara's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing back tears. She lifted the recorder out carefully and checked it. Batteries still inside, though God knew if they still worked after all these years. She pressed play. Static crackled, then silence. Then her father's laugh. Amara quotes, chest clenched. She hadn't heard that sound in over 20 years. The recording was poor quality, distant, like it had been captured through a wall or from another room. But it was definitely him. "Arthur, you're paranoid," her father's voice said, warm and teasing. "Richard wouldn't—" "I know my brother." Arthur's younger voice cut in tight with tension. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Keep copies of everything. Don't trust him." "I don't trust anyone but you," her father said. "We're partners, remember, all the way." Static again. Then a new voice. Older. Rougher. "Richard Sterling." "Is the mechanic here?" Richard asked someone. "Yeah, boss. In the garage." A different voice. Unfamiliar. "Good. I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. This conversation never happened. Understand?" "Yes, sir." Michael O'Connell drives a blue Honda Civic. License plate. Richard rattled off numbers. Tomorrow night he's driving up Route 7 to meet with the patent lawyer. Mountain road. Lots of curves. Amara's hands began to shake. "I need you to make sure his brakes fail." Richard continued calm, as if ordering coffee. "Make it look natural. Wear and tear. Nothing suspicious." That's murder, Mr. Sterling." "That's business." Richard's voice hardened. "And you'll do it unless you want your son's scholarship to disappear. Unless you want your wife to know about Rachel. Unless you want to lose everything." A long pause. "It'll be done," the mechanic said finally, voice hollow. "Smart man. There's $50,000 in it for you. Cash. Plus your silence forever." "Forever," the mechanic repeated. The recording clicked off. Amara sat frozen, the recorder clutched in her hands. The proof. The actual proof. Richard Sterling ordering her father's murder. A mechanic agreeing. The whole conspiracy laid bare. But the tape continued. Static again. Then Arthur's voice alone this time. Different recording. Later. "This is Arthur Sterling. Today is July 10th, 2006. 2 weeks after Michael O'Connell's death. I've just learned what my brother did. I confronted him. He admitted everything. Laughed about it. Said Michael was too idealistic, too dangerous. Said the patent had to stay in the family." Arthur's voice broke. "I should go to the police. I know I should. But if I do, the company collapses. Thousands lose their jobs. The Sterling name becomes synonymous with murder. And Richard is dying anyway. Heart disease. The doctors give him months." A long silence. Amara could hear Arthur breathing, struggling. "So I'm making a different choice," Arthur said. "I'm keeping this evidence. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. I'm going to find Michael's daughter. Give her what should have been his. Give her the power to choose justice or mercy, punishment or peace." Another pause. "Michael, if somehow you're listening, I'm sorry. I failed you. I failed your family. But I swear I'll find a way to fix this, even if it takes forever." The tape clicked off for the last time. Amara sat in the silent library, tears streaming down her face. She rewound the tape to the beginning and played it again, just to hear her father laugh one more time. The sound broke her. She doubled over, sobbing, the recorder pressed against her chest, like she could somehow hold on to that moment. That laugh, that proof that her father had been real and alive and happy once. Arthur had known. For decades he'd known. He, quote, kept the evidence, hidden it, protected it. And now it was hers. Amara wiped her eyes and stood on shaking legs. She carefully placed the recorder back in the metal box and locked it. Then she slid it into her jacket pocket. 23 days left. But she didn't need 23 days anymore. She had everything she needed right here. The rain continued outside, washing the windows in sheets of gray. Amara walked to the library door and opened it. Mrs. Higgins stood in the hallway, clearly having been listening. "Is something wrong, Miss O'Connell?" the woman asked coldly. "I thought I heard crying." Amara smiled. A real smile. "The first one since entering this house." "Nothing's wrong," she said. Everything just became very, very clear. She walked past Mrs. Higgins toward the stairs, one hand resting on the metal box in her pocket. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "All the way, Arthur. All the way. All the way, Dad," Amara whispered. "I promise." Amara made it back to her room without anyone stopping her. She locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on the bed with the metal box in her lap. The tape inside was dynamite proof of murder, proof of conspiracy proof that could destroy Brendan and vindicate her father, but she needed to get it out of this house. She pulled out her phone to call Baines, then stopped. No signal. Someone had installed a jammer. Amara went to the window and looked out at the grounds. Guards patrolled the perimeter with radios and flashlights, at least 6 that she could see. Brendan knew she'd found something. A knock at the door made her jump. "Miss O'Connell!" Mrs. Higgins's voice dripped false concern. "There are some gentlemen here to see you. They say it's urgent." Amara's stomach dropped. "What gentlemen?" "A Dr. Pearson and his associates. They have paperwork regarding your mental health evaluation." Mental health evaluation. Amara's blood went cold. Brendan was going to have her declared incompetent, lock her away in some psychiatric facility where she'd be drugged and trapped and silenced forever. The Wills rule flashed through her mind. 30 days, no leaving. But there was that one carve-out Arthur had insisted on. If she left to seek justice for her father, the inheritance held. This wasn't running. This was justice. "Tell them I'm not interested," Amara called back. "I'm afraid it's not optional, dear. They have a court order." Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets, heavy, getting closer. A soft scraping sound came from the door. Amara grabbed the piece of broken glass she'd kept from the night of the gas leak and backed toward the window. The door opened to reveal not men in suits, but one of the maids, the younger one with nervous eyes and shaking hands as she slipped inside and quickly shut the door. "You need to leave," the girl whispered urgently, "right now." Amara lowered the glass slightly. "Who are you?" "My name's Sophie. I worked at Rusty Anchor before Rick fired me." Her words tumbled out fast. "You gave me $20 once from your tips. You said it was for bus fare, but I knew you needed it more than me." "I never forgot that." Amara remembered 6 months ago a girl crying in the break room because her boyfriend had taken her car. "What are you doing here?" "Mrs. Higgins hired me 3 weeks ago." "I didn't know you'd be here until you arrived." Sophie grabbed Amara's arm. "They're all downstairs now, distracted. This is your only chance. If you help me, you'll lose your job or worse." "I know, but you helped me when you had nothing. Now it's my turn." Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Men's voices got closer. Sophie led Amara to a servant's staircase hidden behind a panel in the wall. The passage was narrow and dark, dusty from disuse. They descended quickly, Amara clutching the metal box to her chest. At the bottom, Sophie peered into the hallway. "Clear. Follow me." They moved through the service areas, cramped corridors, storage rooms, the old kitchen that hadn't been used in decades. Sophie stopped at a door marked Waste Management and whispered, "The trash goes out every day at 2 in about 10 minutes. You hide in one of the bins and I wheel you out to the truck." "That's insane." "It's the only way past the guards because nobody checks the trash." Sophie opened the door to reveal a room filled with garbage bins. "Trust me." Sophie grabbed coveralls from a hook. "Put these on. If anyone sees you, you're the new sanitation worker." Amara changed quickly, stuffing her clothes and the metal box into a canvas bag Sophie provided. The coveralls were too big and smelled like chemicals. Sophie grabbed a large rolling bin that was empty except for a few bags at the bottom. "Get in." Amara climbed inside. Sophie piled garbage bags on top of her just enough to hide her if someone glanced in. The smell was awful, but Amara had worked in enough dumpsters at Rusty Anchor to handle it. "Stay quiet no matter what," Sophie whispered before closing the lid. Darkness surrounded Amara. The bin started moving, wheels squeaking. She pressed one hand over her mouth, the other clutching the canvas bag. Voices came muffled through the plastic. "Trash pickup." A guard's voice. "Yes, sir. Same as every day." Sophie sounded calm. "We're on high alert. Nobody in or out without clearance." "I understand, but the trash still needs to go unless you want it piling up in the kitchen." A pause. Amara held her breath. "Make it quick." The bin moved faster. Amara heard gates opening, vehicles, voices calling. Sophie, quote, as whisper came barely audible. "We're at the gate. Don't move." The bin stopped. Footsteps circled it. Amara's heart hammered. "What's in here?" A different guard closer. "Trash from the kitchen, food waste mainly." "Open it." The lid lifted slightly. Light streamed in. Amara pressed herself flat beneath the garbage bags, barely breathing. A long silence. "Christ, that stinks." "Close it up." The lid slammed shut. "Go ahead, and shower when you get back because you smell like death." The bin moved forward through the gates. Amara could hear traffic now. Real Traffic City sounds. They, quote, made it out. The bin rolled for another minute before stopping. The lid opened. Sophie's face appeared flushed and sweating. You okay? Amara climbed out on shaking legs, gulping fresh air. They were in an alley behind the estate with no guards or cameras. Thank you, Amara started. Don't thank me yet. You need to go now. They'll realize you're gone any minute. Sophie pressed 3 $20 bills into Amara's hand. It's all I have. Take it. I can't. Take it, you saved me once. This doesn't even come close to making us even. Amara hugged her quickly hard. Then she grabbed the canvas bag and ran. She ditched the coveralls in a dumpster 2 blocks away and pulled her own clothes back on. The metal box went into the canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She had $60, no working phone, and Brendan's people would be hunting for her within minutes. The police number Brendan had money and influence to bury the evidence in red tape for years. She needed something bigger, something public, something Brendan couldn't control the media. Amara spotted a bus stop and checked the route map. The Chronicle building, the city's largest newspaper, was downtown 6 stops away. She boarded the next bus and paid the $2.50 fare, leaving her with $57 in change. The crowded bus had Amara sitting in the back with the canvas bag on her lap, trying to look invisible, like just another worker heading home. Nobody looked twice at her. People in service positions became wallpaper invisible beneath notice. She'd hated it at Rusty Anchor, but now it saved her life. The bus crawled through traffic for 25 minutes. Amara watched the streets pass every muscle tense waiting for police cars or Brendan's black Mercedes. Nobody recognized her. The bus stopped at Chronicle Plaza. Amara got off and looked up at the 15-story building of glass and steel with the Chronicle logo blazing across the top. She walked through the revolving doors into a lobby full of reporters and editors rushing with purpose. A security desk stood between her and the elevators. Can I help you? The guard looked bored. I need to speak to someone in investigative journalism. It's urgent. Do you have an appointment? No, but then you'll need to call and schedule one. He turned away, dismissing her. Amara set the canvas bag on the desk hard. The metal box inside made a solid thunk. I have evidence of a 20-year-old murder committed by Richard Sterling, covered up by the Sterling family, she said loudly. And I'm the sole heir to the Sterling fortune who's about to be declared insane and locked away, so the truth stays buried. The guard stared at her. So did 3 people in the lobby. I also have a tape recording of the murder being planned. Amara continued pitching her voice to Carrie. And I'll give it to whoever gets me in front of a camera in the next 5 minutes. A woman in a business suit with sharp eyes and a press badge turned around. Did you say Sterling? Yes. Tape recording? Yes. The woman smiled. Come with me. 10 minutes later, Amara sat in a conference room surrounded by journalists. The tape recorder sat on the table in front of her. The news director had already made 3 phone calls. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? He asked. Once we go live, there's no taking it back. Amara thought about her father, about Arthur, about Sophie risking everything to help her escape. I'm sure. They brought her to the broadcast studio with cameras, lights, and makeup people touching up her face while she sat in the interview chair across from anchor Jennifer Blake. We're live in 60 seconds, someone called. Amara, S hand shook. She pressed them flat against her thighs. Jennifer asked if she was ready. The countdown started. Amara nodded. Good evening. This is Jennifer Blake with a Chronicle News special report. We're joined by Amara O'Connell, who claims to have evidence of a murder covered up by one of the city's most prominent families for 20 years. Miss O'Connell, can you tell us what you've discovered? Amara looked directly into the camera lens, into the homes of everyone watching. My name is Amara O'Connell, and I have proof that my father, Michael O'Connell, was murdered by Richard Sterling in 2006 to steal his patent and silence him forever. She held up the tape recorder. This is a recording of Richard Sterling ordering a mechanic to cut my father's brake lines to make it look like an accident to kill him and take everything he'd created. Jennifer leaned forward. That's an extraordinary claim. Do you have... I have the tape. I have documents. I have evidence that's been hidden for decades. Amara interrupted. And I'm showing it to the world right now because the Sterling family tried to have me declared insane and locked away to protect their secrets. She pressed play. Richard Sterling's voice filled the studio, cold, calculating, ordering murder like it was a business transaction. The room went silent. When the tape finished, Jennifer's face was white. We need to verify this. Verify it, investigate it, tear it apart if you want, Amara agreed. But do it publicly because the moment I leave this building, they'll try to silence me again. Jennifer looked at the camera. You heard it here first, folks. We'll be following this story closely. Miss O'Connell, thank you for your courage. Thank you for listening, Amara said. The camera light went off. Amara sat back in the chair, exhausted. She, quote, done it. The truth was out there now, public, undeniable. And there was no putting it back. The story exploded overnight. By morning, every news channel was running the tape. Social media erupted with hashtags demanding justice. Protesters gathered outside Sterling Industries headquarters with signs reading "Justice for Michael O'Connell" and "Blood Money." Amara stayed at the Chronicle building under protection while Baines worked with prosecutors to build the case. The district attorney moved fast, filing criminal charges against Brendan Sterling for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and attempted kidnapping. The trial began 3 weeks later. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, cameras, and crowds screaming questions as Amara arrived with Baines. She wore a simple navy suit he'd bought her professional, respectful, nothing flashy. She wanted the focus on the truth, not on her. Inside the courtroom was suffocating. Every seat filled, standing room only, the air thick with anticipation and the weight of 20 years of buried secrets finally seeing daylight. Brendan sat at the defense table in an expensive charcoal suit, flanked by 3 high-priced lawyers. He looked calm, almost bored, like this was a minor inconvenience rather than a murder trial. When his eyes met Amara's across the room, he smiled, cold confident, like he still held all the cards. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Margaret Chen was in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense justice. She took her seat and surveyed the packed courtroom with sharp eyes. This court is now in session. The People versus Brendan Sterling. Counselors, are you ready to proceed? The prosecution stood. Ready, Your Honor. Brendan's lead attorney, Marcus Webb, rose smoothly. Ready, Your Honor. The prosecution presented their case first. They played the tape Richard Sterling's voice, ordering the mechanic to cut the brake lines. The mechanic's reluctant agreement, the cold calculation of premeditated murder. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as the voices of dead men confessed to killing Michael O'Connell. When it finished, Webb stood immediately. Objection, Your Honor. This tape is allegedly 20 years old with no verifiable chain of custody. We have no way to authenticate it, no proof of when or where it was recorded, and no evidence it hasn't been tampered with or fabricated entirely. Judge Chen looked at the prosecution. Response. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we have supporting documentation found with the tape, including technical specifications that match recording equipment consistent with mid-2000s recording devices. We also have testimony regarding where the tape was discovered and who kept it. That's circumstantial at best, Webb countered. The tape itself could be a complete fabrication created by Miss O'Connell to secure an inheritance she has no legitimate claim to. Amara's hands clenched in her lap. This was exactly what she'd feared Brendan's lawyers turning the victim into the villain. Furthermore, Webb continued, even if we accept this tape as genuine, it implicates Richard Sterling, who died 20 years ago. My client was a child when these alleged events occurred and bears no responsibility for his father's actions. Judge Chen held up a hand. Enough. Does the prosecution have additional evidence or witnesses? The prosecutor glanced at Amara, who nodded slightly. We do, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Elias Bain to the stand. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Brendan's smile faltered for the first time. The bailiff opened the side door, and an elderly man shuffled in. 70-something with thinning white hair and hands that trembled as he took the oath. He looked terrified eyes darting around the packed courtroom like a trapped animal. Amara had spent the first week at Sterling Manor working with Baines to find this man. Elias Bain had disappeared after Michael O'Connell's death, living under assumed names in 3 different states, always looking over his shoulder, waiting for the Sterling family to silence him permanently. It had taken every ounce of Amara's persuasion to convince him to testify, promising protection, promising that the truth would finally set him free. Please state your name for the record, the prosecutor said gently. Elias Bain. His voice was barely audible. Mr. Bain, what was your occupation in 2006? I was a mechanic, worked at Premium Auto Service on 5th Street. And did you know Richard Sterling? Elias swallowed hard. Yes, he was a customer. Can you tell the court what happened in June of 2006? Elias's hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. Mr. Sterling came to the shop after hours and asked me to work on a car that wasn't his, a blue Honda Civic belonging to Michael O'Connell. What did he ask you to do? He told me to cut the brake lines and make it look like natural wear. He said if I didn't do it, he'd destroy my family. Elias's voice broke. He knew things about me, things I'd done wrong. He had leverage and he used it. Did you cut the brake lines? A long, painful silence. Yes. Tears streamed down Elias's face. God help me, I did. And 3 days later, I heard on the news that Michael O'Connell had died in a car accident on Route 7. I knew what I'd done. I knew I'd killed him. The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen banged her gavel. Order Webb jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this witness has just confessed to murder. His testimony is self-serving and completely unreliable. Mr. Bain has been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony, the prosecutor said, and he's corroborating the tape recording. Judge Chen banged her gavel again. I'll allow the testimony to continue. Mr. Webb, you'll have your chance to cross-examine. The prosecutor turned back to Elias. Mr. Bain, after Michael O'Connell's death, did you have any further contact with the Sterling family? I ran, changed my name, moved to Nevada, then Oregon, then Arizona. I've been running for 20 years because I was terrified they'd kill me too. Why testify now? Elias looked directly at Amara. Because Miss O'Connell found me and asked me to do the right thing. She said her father deserved justice, and she was right. I've been a coward long enough. The prosecutor nodded and sat down. No further questions. Webb's cross-examination was brutal, but ultimately ineffective. He tried to paint Elias as a liar seeking a deal, but the old man's obvious remorse and fear were too genuine to dismiss. Finally, the prosecutor stood for redirect. Mr. Bain, one final question. Is there anything else on that tape that the court should hear? Elias nodded slowly. There's a second recording at the end, from the day after the accident. The prosecutor played the tape again, letting it run past the conversation between Richard and Elias. Static. Then a child's voice, high and clear. Daddy, is Uncle Michael really dead? Brendan's voice, 10 years old. Richard's response was muffled but clear enough. Yes, son. He had an accident. Did he go to sleep under the cliff like you said he would? The courtroom froze. That's enough questions, Brendan. Go play. But, Daddy, you said if people don't do what you want, they go to sleep forever. Did Uncle Michael not do what you wanted? I said that's enough. The tape clicked off. Silence filled the courtroom. Absolute crushing silence. Brendan S. face had gone white. His lawyers sat frozen, staring at the tape recorder like it was a bomb. The prosecutor turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just heard was a 10-year-old boy who knew his father had murdered someone. A child raised to believe that killing people who stood in your way was acceptable. She pointed at Brendan, and when that child grew up, he tried to use those same tools against Amara O'Connell. He locked her in a room filling with gas. He tried to have her declared insane and institutionalized. He did everything in his power to silence her, just like his father silenced Michael O'Connell. The prosecution rests. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. We find the defendant Brendan Sterling guilty on all counts. The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the doors. Cameras flashed. Brendan sat motionless, staring straight ahead as the reality crashed down on him. Judge Chen banged her gavel. Mr. Sterling, you will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Bailiff. 2 officers moved forward with handcuffs. Brendan finally moved. He turned to Amara, his face twisted with rage. You destroyed everything, my family, my legacy, my future. You're nothing but a worthless waitress who got lucky. The bailiff grabbed his arm, but Brendan kept screaming. You think you've won. You think you deserve Arthur's money. You're garbage. You'll always be garbage. Amara stood slowly. She walked toward him until she was close enough to speak without shouting. Arthur's money was never meant for you, she said quietly. Because you never understood what he tried to teach you. Money doesn't make you worthy. Character does, and yours is rotten to the core. Brendan lunged, but the officers held him back. You don't know how to value a human life, Amara continued. You only know how to destroy. That's why you lost everything. The officers dragged Brendan toward the exit. His screams echoed down the hallway, long after the door closed behind him. Amara turned away, feeling lighter than she had in months. Justice. Finally. 6 months later, Amara stood in the conference room on the 40th floor of Sterling Tower, looking out at the city sprawling below. Behind her, the board of directors waited in uncomfortable silence. She turned to face them. 12 men and women in expensive suits who'd spent decades building an empire on stolen innovation and ruthless business practices. I know what you're thinking, Amara said, walking to the head of the table. You think I'm going to sell Sterling Industries, break it up, and disappear? A few of them shifted in their seats. You're wrong. I'm not selling. I'm rebuilding. She pulled up a presentation on the screen. The first slide showed her father's original patent drawings for the seismic dampening system. This technology was created by Michael O'Connell 20 years ago. It was stolen, buried, and credited to the Sterling family. That ends today. She clicked to the next slide, a press release. Effective immediately, all patents derived from my father's work will be renamed the O'Connell Safety System. Every building constructed using this technology will bear his name. The licensing fees will be reduced by 60% and made available to affordable housing developers. The CFO leaned forward. Miss O'Connell, that will cost us hundreds of millions in revenue. Good, because we're going to use this technology to actually help people instead of just making profit. Sterling Industries is becoming the largest affordable housing developer in the country. We're going to build safe, quality homes for people who've been priced out of the market. The room erupted in protests. The CFO stood. This is financial suicide. Our shareholders will... I'm the majority shareholder, Amara cut him off, and this is what's happening. Anyone who doesn't like it can resign with a generous severance package. She waited. Nobody moved. Good. Then let's get to work. 3 months later, Amara stood outside Rusty Anchor for the first time since Rick had thrown her out in the rain. The diner looked exactly the same, peeling paint grimy windows, the flickering neon sign that read Anchor, because the Rusty had burned out years ago. She, quote, bought it 2 weeks earlier. The previous owner had been eager to sell after health violations surfaced. Amara pushed open the door. The smell hit her immediately. Grease-burnt coffee desperation. The lunch rush was over. A few stragglers sat at tables picking at cold fries. And there behind the counter was Rick. He looked up when she entered and his face went white. He'd seen her on the news, the waitress who'd inherited billions, the woman who'd brought down the Sterling family. Rick straightened, trying to recover. Miss O'Connell, I didn't know you were coming. Why would you? I didn't call ahead. Rick's hands twisted the dish rag he was holding. Look about what happened before. You fired me, stole my wages, and threw my belongings in the street during a rainstorm, Amara said calmly. You humiliated me and called me a thief when you knew I wasn't. I was just doing my job, the owner said. You were bullying someone who couldn't fight back because it made you feel powerful, Amara interrupted. Rick swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I really am. Amara studied him. He looked older, more worn down. The bully's confidence had crumbled. I bought this place, Amara said. Rick, quote, eyes widened. You what? I own Rusty Anchor now, which means I own your job. The color drained from Rick's face. Please, I need this job. I've got child support bills. I'm not firing you, Amara said. But you're not managing anymore either. You're going to work the floor bus tables, wash dishes, clean bathrooms, all the jobs you used to make other people do while you stood around barking orders. Rick opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. Okay, I can do that. And you're going to apply for the position like everyone else. Fill out an application interview, provide references. If you want to work here under new management, you apply like any other candidate. And if you get hired, you'll learn to treat the staff with respect, or you're gone. Rick stared at her jaw working. Finally, he nodded. Fair enough. The applications are over there. Amara pointed to a stack on the counter. You have until Friday. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Rick, if I hear about you mistreating anyone's staff or customers, you're done. Not just here. Every restaurant owner in the city will know exactly what kind of person you are. Rick nodded, pale and quiet. Amara walked to the back corner booth, Arthur's booth, and sat down in his old spot. She'd already hired an architect to redesign the diner with brighter lighting, better ventilation, and a real kitchen. She'd raise wages, offer benefits, and create training programs for people who wanted better opportunities. A young waitress approached, looking nervous. She couldn't have been more than 20 with tired eyes that reminded Amara of herself. Can I get you anything? The girl asked. Just coffee? Black? The waitress turned to go, then hesitated. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Amara with an expression painfully familiar, someone wanting to do something kind, but afraid of getting caught. Amara followed her gaze and saw a small child, maybe 7 years old, sitting alone by the window. Dirty clothes, messy hair, clearly without anyone taking care of them. The waitress had a muffin in her apron pocket, probably something she'd planned to sneak to the hungry child when no one was looking. Amara watched as the waitress walked past the child's table and quickly set the muffin down without a word before hurrying to get Amara's coffee. When the girl returned, her hands were shaking slightly. "That was kind of you," Amara said quietly, "giving food to that child." The waitress went pale. "I'm sorry, I'll pay for it. I just thought—" "You thought a hungry kid needed help. And you were right." Amara reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope containing a scholarship to culinary school and a small brass key numbered 405. "What's your name?" Amara asked. "Sarah. Sarah Chen." "Well, Sarah, I think you're exactly the kind of person who should be running places like this." Amara placed the envelope and key on the table. "There's a scholarship in there. Full ride to culinary school or hospitality management, your choice. The key opens a safety deposit box with additional resources to help you get started." Sarah stared at the envelope, tears welling. "I don't understand. Why would you—" "Because someone once did the same for me," Amara said. "And now it's my turn to pass it forward." She left Sarah standing there, stunned, and walked out into the afternoon sun. The rain had cleared, leaving the streets washed clean and gleaming. The sky was that perfect blue that only comes after a storm. Amara stood on the sidewalk and looked back through the window. Sarah was showing the envelope to another waitress, both crying. The little kid was eating the muffin crumbs, falling onto the table. For the first time since her father died, Amara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Hey, Mom. How are you feeling?" "Much better, honey. The new medication is working wonders." "Good. I'm glad." "Your father would be so proud of you." Amara's throat tightened. "I hope so. You're doing more than he ever dreamed. You're making the world better." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Amara stood there a moment longer, letting the sun warm her face. "Dad was right," she said quietly. "Kindness isn't the generosity of the rich. It's the sharing of those who have nothing. And today, I have everything." She thought about Arthur pretending to be homeless to find a genuinely good heart. She thought about Sophie risking everything to help her escape. She thought about her father, whose legacy lived on through his daughter. She walked down the street toward where Baines waited with the car. Behind her, inside Rusty Anchor, Sarah Chen clutched the envelope and brass key, her whole future suddenly bright with possibility. The cycle continued. Kindness passed forward like a torch in the darkness. And the world got a little bit better.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.